Welcome to another deep dive on Books and Bites. We're going to be talking about Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow by Yuval Noah Harari. It's a book that really digs into some, I'd say, pretty big questions about the future of, well, us, humans.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a really fascinating discussion.
It really is. It's quite a journey, this book. First it looks back at how far, we've come as humans. And, for so long, for most of our history, we've just been fighting to survive, haven't we? I mean, famine, disease, and war, it's been a constant struggle.
Totally. And now, well, things are different. I mean, we're living longer, we're healthier, and technology, science, I mean, it's incredible how far we've come.
It is. But Harari's point is that, well, now we want more. We're not content with just surviving anymore.
Right. We're aiming higher.
Much higher. He even calls it Homo Deus.
Okay, Homo Deus. Break that down for me.
It's like we're on this path to becoming, well, almost godlike, like immortality, enhanced abilities, even engineering happiness. It's exciting, sure, but kind of scary too, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, just imagine a world where death isn't a given. Or you could just, get an implant and boost your intelligence. It really makes you think, what are the consequences of all this, good and bad?
Right. And one of the ideas that really sticks with you from the book is this concept of the Anthropocene.
The Anthropocene.
Yeah. It's the age, basically, where we humans are the dominant force on the planet. We're not just adapting to the environment, we're actively engineering it, like with genetic modification or even trying to control the climate.
Start taking evolution into our own hands.
In a way, yeah. But that leads to another question Harari brings up. Is this a good thing? Or are we messing with things we don't fully understand? Playing God a little bit.
It's a big question. And it makes you think about what it even means to be human in the first place. I mean, for centuries, we've thought of ourselves as special because of, well, our brains, our ability to use language, to think abstractly. But what happens if AI gets better at all of that than we are?
That's when it gets really interesting. Harari says that one of the keys to human success has been our ability to believe in things that aren't actually real, like money, nations, even human rights. These are all kind of made-up ideas, but they've allowed us to cooperate on a huge scale and build these complex societies.
And you're saying AI could change that?
Well, what if AI figures out how to create even more powerful stories, even more convincing narratives that shape our beliefs and values in ways we can't even imagine yet? I mean, it's kind of unsettling to think about.
Yeah, a little bit. Because then, are we really in control of our own choices anymore? It makes you think about free will and all of that.
For sure. And another point Harari makes is that there's this kind of unspoken agreement that's been going on for centuries between science and capitalism.
Oh yeah, like how they work together.
Right. Governments have always supported scientific research and economic growth, but they've done it with the hope that it'll lead to, stability and prosperity for everyone.
So it's like science drives innovation, which leads to economic growth, and then, at least in theory, everyone benefits, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like there's got to be a downside to that, too.
There is. You see, as technology gets more and more advanced, the people who control the data, the algorithms, the actual means of production, they gain more and more power. And that concentration of power could lead to a future where a tiny group of people are basically calling all the shots.
So it's not just about robots taking over or something like that. It's about technology making inequality even worse, like a world where the gap between the haves and have-nots is just enormous.
Exactly. And it gets even more complicated when you think about Harari's discussion of humanism.
Okay, so humanism, remind me.
It's this idea that human experience, like our individual emotions, are what really matter, that they're the source of meaning. And there are different types of humanism, like liberal humanism is all about individual freedom, while socialist humanism focuses more on collective well-being.
But they all have that common thread that human experience is at the center of everything.
Right. But Harari says that all these forms of humanism are based on this belief that humans are special, that our experiences and values are, the most important thing. And he argues that science is starting to challenge that, especially neuroscience and AI.
So, if machines can someday know us better than we know ourselves, if they can predict our emotions and even manipulate them, what does that do to our sense of being unique, of being human?
That's the big question. It's almost like an existential crisis for our whole species. If our emotions, our beliefs can be hacked or controlled by AI, then what are we really? And Harari has a name for this new way of looking at the world. He calls it dataism.
Dataism. Okay, I'm intrigued.
It's the idea that basically the flow of information is the most important thing. And that algorithms, they're just better at processing all that information than we are, better at making decisions.
So does that mean human intuition, emotions, all that just becomes obsolete?
That's what dataism suggests. That we're basically just nodes in this giant network. Our lives determined by these algorithms that supposedly know us better than we know ourselves.
It's kind of a mind-blowing concept, isn't it?
It is. And Harari doesn't necessarily say that this is how things will definitely turn out, but he presents it as a very real possibility, something we need to think about. I mean, if we don't understand the forces that are shaping our world, how can we possibly hope to shape our own destiny?
That's a good point. And speaking of destiny, Harari talks about 3 potential futures for humanity. One is that we basically merge with AI, become cyborgs with these enhanced abilities.
Right. And another possibility is that AI just surpasses us completely, like we become irrelevant. Imagine a world where machines can solve problems and make decisions that we can't even begin to understand.
A bit scary. And then there's the third possibility, and this one might be the most unsettling. It's the idea of a new elite emerging. A superhuman elite that leaves everyone else behind.
It's a really thought-provoking idea. Like, forget the robot uprising. What if it's a small group of humans, technologically enhanced humans, who end up controlling everything, leaving the rest of us to just struggle to keep up?
It's kind of a dark vision of the future, and it ties into what we were talking about earlier about technology potentially making inequality even worse.
Yeah.
If only a few people benefit from these advancements, the gap between the rich and the poor, it can become wider than ever before.
Absolutely. And there's another issue Harari brings up, this data divide. The people who control the algorithms, the information, they're the ones who shape how we see the world, what we believe, even how we feel.
It's almost like that old saying, knowledge is power, but on a whole new level. If you control the algorithms, you control reality, in a way.
Exactly. And that's why this whole dataism thing is so important to think about. We could end up living in a world where our thoughts and feelings are essentially being dictated by algorithms that are designed to serve the interests of a very small group of people.
So what can we do about it? I mean, it all feels a little overwhelming.
Harari doesn't pretend to have all the answers, but he does say that we need to be aware of the potential dangers of technology and that we have to think critically about the kind of future we want to create.
So not rejecting technology altogether, but using it wisely. Making sure it serves humanity, not the other way around.
Right. We need to be aware of the ethical implications of all these advancements to make sure we're not sacrificing our values for the sake of progress.
And are there any other things we should be thinking about?
Well, he also talks about the importance of rethinking our relationship with nature. As we become more and more reliant on technology, it's easy to forget that we're still biological beings, that we're part of this natural world.
I see what you mean. It's like we're trying to engineer our way out of nature, but we can't really escape it, can we? We are part of it.
We are. And the more we try to control and manipulate nature, the more likely we are to face unintended consequences.
Makes sense. So it's not just about the future of humanity. It's about the future of all life on Earth. Our choices have a ripple effect.
Exactly. We need to think about the impact our actions have on other species, on ecosystems, on the planet as a whole. And that's where Harari's call for a broader perspective comes in. We have to move beyond our own self-interest and really understand where we fit into this vast universe. It's about recognizing that we're part of this much bigger picture. And we need to act accordingly. We need to be more humble, admit that we don't have all the answers, and realize that our actions, they have consequences, far-reaching ones.
Right. I think that leads into what I found to be one of the most important points Harari makes, that the future isn't set in stone. Like it's something we create through the choices we make. We actually have the power to shape our destiny, but only if we're willing to think critically about the kind of world we want and then, make conscious choices.
I agree. It's a call to action, really. We need to step up and take responsibility for the future, not just of humanity, but of the planet.
Absolutely. Understanding how powerful technology is, but also recognizing its limits, making sure it serves us, not the other way around.
And one thing that really hit me in Homo Deus is the way Harari talks about stories. He says that at our core, we're storytelling creatures. It's how we understand the world through narratives.
That's interesting.
But he also had this warning. As AI gets more and more advanced, it could become the ultimate storyteller, right? Shaping our beliefs, our values in ways we can't even grasp yet. And that brings up these huge questions about, free will, even.
Because if we're being constantly bombarded with information, with stories, all tailored to, play on our emotions and make us act a certain way, are we really in control?
That's the scary part. But I think it also shows how important it is to be more careful about the information we take in, to be critical of the stories we choose to believe.
So we need to become, what, like algorithmic literacy, is that what you'd call it? To understand how these systems work and to spot when we're being manipulated.
Exactly. But it's not just about being savvy consumers of information, It's also about us taking back our role as storytellers. We need to be actively involved in creating the narratives that shape our world, not just passively accepting whatever some algorithm or some powerful person is feeding us.
I like that. Reclaiming our role as storytellers. It's a powerful idea.
It is, because the future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we build through our choices, our actions, and the stories we tell.
Well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on. Homo Deus is such a thought-provoking book. Really makes you grapple with some big questions. And ultimately, I think it leaves you feeling like we have a choice to make. We can choose to shape the future, for better or worse.
Couldn't agree more. If you're ready to dive into those big questions yourself, I'd highly recommend checking out Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow by Yuval Noah Harari. We've got a link down in the description where you can grab a copy.
And of course, don't forget to subscribe to Books and Bites for more deep dives into the books that are shaping how we understand the world. Thanks for listening.